You're live.
Welcome to Slow News Day Live. My name is Steve Boykin. I'm hanging out in Brookdale, California. I am joined by my better than your co-host, Glory Jones. It's good to see you, Glory. How you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm excited, and especially on this momentous occasion where we are on the anniversary of the Carnation Revolution in Portugal.
And why is that a particular item of note and import?
For Bill.
Okay. We're actually
It's
gonna
also
do
a revolution.
it is the anniversary of the Carnation Revolution. It's the only like non-violent revolution
Yeah.
in modern history. So we'll be exploring it a little bit on Thursday, which will be our 300th full-length Slow News Day. We've got a little bit over 500 videos up on the channel, including all of the free Assange vigils, but this will be like episode 300 for us, which apparently is important. So we're going to have a moderator panel, and we're going to talk about that. And now I'll stop wasting Eva Bartlett's time. Coming back to the program, we're so very happy to have her back on. Independent journalist and researcher, and just wonderful human being, and proud dog owner. So
very.
Eva Bartlett, it's really good to see you again. How are you?
I'm doing very well, and I brought my dogs with me to the show.
Your house looks like well, one, it looks like a house that I've been working on for like the last year, but two, it also looks like a typical place here. Like
this is a house I'm renting for the year, about an hour south of Moscow, and kind of ended up here randomly. I had a few things that I wanted. I wanted a place that I could have pets because I knew I wanted to get a dog. I ended up getting a couple.
That's how that works.
I wanted a wood stove and wanted a place that was near a forest. And this is like a 10-minute walk from a really massive forest. So I really lucked out with this place. The rent is, I could have gotten slightly cheaper in Moscow, but the rent is still less than a one bedroom apartment in Ontario. So I'm happy with the arrangement.
Wait, you're talking about the general location, and I live in the Redwoods in the Santa Cruz Mountains, and so like my qualifications for a place are wood burning stove in the woods, further out better than closer in. You know,
yeah.
And like now we can talk. Now we can start thinking about whether or not I'm gonna live there. Like, next month, I'm going even further into the woods, and we'll hopefully be setting up there for a while.
Fantastic. That's my intention eventually, is to find a plot of land and either acquire a house or have it built or learn how to build one myself. Probably not the latter.
So one of the things that I want to do, because we are in the process of trying to we've been encouraging people to get the fuck out of major metropolitan areas.
Yeah.
And if they can, build out their own communities and establish mutual aid networks and hopefully trade routes and agreements, shit like that. So one of the things, because I'm a carpenter, one of the things that I want to do is document building the cabin, building a tiny home, something like that, and give that away for free. But also, if it looks like it's coming there, like I'll hire myself out to come to a property and teach people how to build and stuff like that too. That's all way down the road though. And we've got a bunch of crazy shit going on already. At your request, we talked to Dean O'Brien, and it was wonderful.
Great.
And Dean brought so much to that interview. It had just such a depth and breadth of experience, and gave us a sense of what was going on in Donbass. And you moved last fall or last spring? I can't remember which, but you moved from the Middle East up to Russia specifically to cover this, right?
Well, I didn't move to Russia until mid-January this year. I visited here for 2 months in 2019, so August and September. And I did come here at that point. It was multi-intentioned. I did intend on going to Donbass. That's why I requested a double entry visa. And I also just wanted to see Russia. Like, I've been called a Russian agent for all these years, so I might as well see the motherland, right? And I also just wanted to be a tourist here. So I did a bit of everything, all of those when I was here. I went to Crimea, which we can also talk about if you like, for two reasons: as a tourist, but also with the intention of talking with people there and seeing. I knew the reality, but confirming what I knew is that they had wanted to join Russia. Actually, what they said is we wanted to return to Russia, which was very interesting. And then I spent, I forget now if it was just under 3 weeks in Donbass. And my intent in going there was to meet the civilians in the hard-hit areas, the most affected civilians. And I was hoping also to meet some local journalists that I could then relay their reports on, because I knew, 2-3 weeks is not a whole lot of time. It's not a lot of time, but at the same time, after visiting a few areas, you hear the same stories. So it was enough time in that sense. And so, yeah, that's why I came here in 2019. And then after all this craziness started last year, I was already out of Canada. I had planned to go to Syria in March, but I left Canada in February to go participate in the Assange panel in the UK. So thankfully, I was out of Canada before all this craziness started. And by craziness,
I want to talk about that too.
Yeah, by craziness, I'll be clear. I don't mean a pandemic. I mean the crazy lockdowns and masks and everything else. And as it happened, I had my visa, my Syrian visa, because contrary to popular belief, I do have to apply for a visa. And so I had my visa in my passport. I had waited a few days more in Lebanon, because usually what I do is fly to Beirut and then go to a place. There's a few different places where you can get a shared taxi and take a shared taxi into Damascus. I do it that way. It's cheaper, takes longer, but that's fine. But I'd waited a couple of days. I can't remember my reason now. I think I was tired or something. And I got into Syria the day before they closed their borders. So then I ended up, instead of staying for what would have been a 4-day visa, extended maybe to 10 days, I ended up staying for 6 months, which is fantastic. Because I love being in Syria. But then I was watching all this play out, in Canada, where I'm from. Well, I was born in the States, but grew up in Canada. And just saying, like, thank God I'm not there, because here in Syria, I have the freedom to go walking. There was briefly, for about a month or so, there was a night curfew from, first it was 6 p.m. and then it was during Ramadan, it was 7:30 p.m. That didn't affect me because I'm kind of an introvert anyway, and I like my nights to myself. But otherwise, every day I was walking 10, 12 kilometers. I was getting to know Damascus as I hadn't before. And nobody was stopping me. Nobody was asking, where are you going? Why are you walking? Where's your mask? None of the shit that I've been reading about in Ontario, for example. And also people were interacting normally, hugging each other, kissing each other on the cheeks. I was going to marketplaces because I like them and I do my shopping there, and they're crammed with people. And so I kept saying, like, I know we're not talking about COVID tonight, but might as well just finish this.
You know what? We can, because we don't have plans here. Plans are for suckers. Plans are for suckers. So
the point I kept making was, like, if people are dropping dead in the streets, why is it that I keep coming to these markets and seeing people, the merchants, the vendors are there every day in these crowded markets? Oh, the neighborhood dog. It's barking out.
It's a good dog. It's a good dog.
Yeah. House defenders.
Doing his job.
Yep. I will probably let them out if she really starts up. One
of my favorite radio news commentators ever was a guy named Travis T. Hip, and he had 2 giant dogs, and he would call into K-Pig to do his news commentary, which he was famous for. And the dogs would start going, and you would hear this, a professional staid, shut the fuck up. Anyway.
I think I was gonna say, I think the dogs heard you for a second because they looked at the camera.
Not you guys. You're fine. You're fine. You're not my dogs.
What they did when they first came, because I adopted them when they were about 5 months old. When they first came, there's a TV over there that I don't use, but at a certain point in the morning, the sunlight is reflecting off the TV. So they would see their own shadows and start barking at themselves, like insanely. And sometimes I'm sitting here.
Before we really get too much into what's going on in Donbass, Ukraine, and Russia, because it's huge and it's got international consequences. Because Ontario is just so crazy right now.
Yeah.
And on the show last week, we showed that press conference with Ford and that woman who was like, yes, you should go snitch on your neighbors. It's it's your duty to snitch on your neighbors, like that. And it was one of the more just out in front, in your face, it couldn't be more blatant that this isn't about health examples that I could think of. And yet we've still got a significant portion of at least the West walking around acting like the complete reorganization of society to cater to the whims of the World Economic Forum is the only logical course of action.
Right.
I don't know, dude. You're Josh. We have the Eva's article about lockdowns.
I think I'll have to share that one.
Okay, I
wasn't sure.
can do
I
that.
didn't know if you wanted me to set that one up or not. I just thought
you
wanted
one more
it in the
time.
Description. I thought you wanted it in the description.
Okay, no, it's all good. If I could, I do want to pull it though because you've got some really good points in it, and it's stuff. I mean, it's stuff that we talk about, and I don't know if you want to walk us through it a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I can open it up. I'll see if I can just remember what I was saying.
Well, I've got it up on the share screen too.
I mean, I did a couple. I did one that was Ontario's had the longest lockdown in North America. And the one following that was about the health crisis. But I think you probably mean the first one I mentioned.
I think the one I have up is the one about the continued lockdowns of the health crisis. But either way, because it's the effects of lockdown is something that, like, it's almost become a third rail to talk about. Like, you can't mention the collateral damage that's been done. Because of lockdowns, because of the way that these were implemented, because of the way that everything rolled out, like all of the focus, at least in most of the media, is either solely on vaccine propaganda or pushing back against vaccine propaganda. And there's this whole other realm concerning mental health that we just don't really explore often enough. And that's one of the approaches that you've taken that I really appreciate. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about it.
Yeah, I was just scrolling through to remember what I wrote, and I think this part is very poignant because of the measures taken and their subsequent toll on our physical and mental health. It's important to bear in mind that, let's see, I wrote, it's worth pointing out that Ontario's population is just under 15 million. The province is locked down. Surgeries are being halted because of a rise in ICU hospitalizations that equates to 0.007% of the population. I mean, that's just ridiculous. And in that article, I was highlighting how people that needed treatment or surgeries for either critical issues like cancer or other issues like hip replacements or whatever, are not getting them, and they've been delayed for no good reason. And the media hype and hysteria is that, oh my God, ICUs are overwhelmed. Oh my God, hospitals are overwhelmed. But granted, it was via Facebook. I talked with one person that said he worked in the biggest hospital in Ottawa. He's like, I walk every day through the COVID unit, and it's not crowded at all. And, I found other people on Twitter that had credible statistics saying, like, no, we're seeing like 70% capacity or something. Then the counter argument is, well, we need to be prepared for the flood. There never is a flood. And then the other thing I was pointing out is that you do a Google search and you find, and this is not specific to Ontario or Canada, but anywhere, you do a Google search for, the period of winter flu season, right? And you'll find every year screaming headlines saying hospitals are overcrowded, overflowing, right? So it's something that happens every year. This year's no different, except that the flu has disappeared. But yeah, and the other one, I don't remember exactly everything I wrote about Ontario's longest lockdown. Well, just pointing out the draconian policies, again, the hospitals issue. And in that one, I actually mentioned one of Canada's unelected medical tyrants, the medical officers of health. And they're kind of the ones behind the scenes pulling the strings. Doug Ford came out, Premier buffoon Doug Ford, came out saying, to be frank, there's no politician in the country who's going to disagree with their chief medical officer. They're just not going to do it. They might as well throw a rope around their neck and jump off a bridge. And I pointed out that in December last year, Toronto's associate medical officer, Barbara Yaff, was laughing with the chief medical officer, David Williams, saying, and she said, I just say what they write down for me. Like literally admitting she's just reading the script.
Yeah.
And, I think in that and a couple other articles I pointed out, these measures, lockdown, masks, whatever, that they insist we adhere to, or not, like last year was not traveling provincial lines over Easter. All the people in positions of power, not just in Canada, again, are violating them. So clearly they don't believe in the measures, So it's like, again, back to like, if it's 0.007% of the population, whatever that statistic was, and the population is 15 million, why the hell are we locked down? It's of course a rhetoric question. I know why we're locked down, but why can't, people, I understand people are being duped, and they don't have these numbers because the media keeps hyping the fear, but this is the reality, it's just astronomical.
So our friend Ryan Christian, Last American Vagabond, and Charlie Robinson, have put forth this concept that I agree with. I do. And it's kind of like a silent majority thing where the belief is that there are a majority approaching of us that actually do understand that something is fundamentally wrong. That the reason you don't see more communication about it is because so many visible examples have been made of those of us who will speak up about it, who have put our necks on, on the line, like from day one, and said exactly what this is about, and exactly what it's for, and exactly who's responsible for it. And so it's made them shut the fuck up and just take it. And nobody's happy about it, except for like maybe the 2% of the population that just hated humanity and wanted everyone to live in an isolated bubble like they do. But unfortunately, those are the people making the fucking policy decisions.
Okay, but even then, like, I'm not a big fan of humans either, but like, I care about the environment.
Okay.
And this is ultimately damaging to the environment in a lot of ways. You see the firsthand impact with like mask pollution and microplastics that are ruining the environment. And then take that onto a macro scale and you see COVID-19 and the Great Reset, people planning to freaking hijack what's left of our environment and ration it back to us while destroying it even more, while mining it even more for resources for their fourth industrial revolution. It's like, it's bad on all fronts. What
amazes me is that we've created an entire culture throughout this lockdown where for stimuli we've replaced serotonin with dopamine. And the dopamine that you get from, social media clicks and stuff like what Eva's getting right now is serotonin. That's happening. And the difference is serotonin doesn't cost any money. You can't buy happiness. Dopamine costs money. You have to pay to get that dopamine hit. Whether it's your internet bill, phone bill, freaking whatever it is you're buying online, whatever, you know, it requires money. So I get Predator class has arranged shit to where the serotonin that Eva is receiving right now is further and farther between than the dopamine that we pay to play for.
Well, I'm sure you follow Ice Age Farmer, right?
Yeah. I don't get to see a lot, but I try. I love that dude, and I want to get him on the show.
Yeah, that would be great. So I also don't watch every single episode, but I like to listen to stuff when I'm cooking. And well, it's not really the best subject to listen to when you're cooking because he's talking a lot about food shortages and killing off animals and so on. But, but I know I've had conversations with friends that you would know about how, you know, the premise that they're enforcing all these new laws. It's supposed to be for animal rights, but really it's not for animal rights. It's to implement Bill Gates's meat-free world. And I'm a vegetarian, by the way. But also, you know, the whole like talking about COVID and animals and thank you. She got my tongue. We got a little close.
This is delightful, by the way, as a dog person.
I know.
Yeah.
It's so nice.
Here's my other one. Come on up. Boofa. Come on. She's my more reflective dog.
Yeah.
Aww.
Anyway, the whole concept of like talking about COVID and animals and then like vaccine for pets, it just it feels like, you know, the powers that be have taken away people's pleasures in every realm, natural pleasures, the ability to exercise. And I wouldn't be surprised if there are new laws about pets at some point. Thankfully, I don't think that'll happen here in Russia. I feel safe here, but I don't want it to happen anywhere. Like, it's just. But anyway,
go ahead.
I was just going to say we kind of I segued because I was talking about being in Syria and during COVID and like what I was seeing there. But then I spent a few months in Serbia while I was waiting to get my paperwork to come here sorted. I was very happy.
You had some incredible pictures from there too. I remember seeing that on Twitter.
Yeah. Oh, I was like the last year. I felt more like a tourist than I have in my adult life because most of my adult life has been activism, right? If I've gone to a country, it's usually for reporting or activist purposes. But last year, and I did go to Syria with that intent and I did do some, but then it became impossible. But I got to be a tourist. Like in Syria, I joined this really cool exploration society that does cool things like camping trips. We did one trip where we were like walking down a river and jumping off of waterfalls into pools of water and camping overnight. Yeah, it was awesome.
Oh, nice.
So I did a lot of like really fun things that I normally don't have time to do because usually I'm there, like I'm doing journalistic things. And then in Serbia, I was just waiting, and I chose that country because I knew that the Serbs had protested in great numbers against lockdown measures previously. So I thought, well, if I'm going to be anywhere, it's a beautiful country. It's not that expensive and people have the will to rise up and protest. So that's where I want to be. And it turned out just being a lovely few months. I got to explore a little bit. And then finally, everything worked out that I could come to Russia. And I'm really happy to be here. After my 2019 visit, even though I was doing journalistic things in Donbass and Crimea, I really just thought, like, I like what I've seen in this country. It's so vilified in the media, but I find people are very kind, very nice. Oh, obviously they're kind everywhere, but I really like this culture. You know, it's a very rich and diverse culture. Like, I didn't know at the time when I came here, but I'll admit my ignorance. I didn't know how many ethnicities there were here. It's a huge country. When I went to Crimea, I met with, not now, that's gonna be noisy. That's my fault. Sometimes I give them cardboard. Like I said, I get them toys and they like the simple things.
When my dog was a puppy, my family used to give him water bottles. So that was really loud.
Yep. Oh, sweetie. But when I went to Crimea, I met with a Ukrainian woman. Actually, she was the head of a Ukrainian committee. I forget the title, but it was about like peace between nations, Ukraine, Russia, and I think it was she who said there's something like 170. Oh, let me find that because it's quite interesting about the diversity in Russia. And she also told me that contrary to Western propaganda about Crimea, they have three languages there, Ukrainian, Russian, and Tatar. Let me just find her, Grachina. Okay, so yeah, she said that in Crimea there are more than 175 nationalities. Oh, that's what it was. Just 20 less than all of Russia. So that's where I learned that Russia has so many nationalities. So I feel ignorant admitting I didn't know that before, but anyway.
I was checking the chat here real quick to see what kind of knuckleheads we've got running around in there. Our chat crew's silly. Somebody did want to know if you cited Vladimir Putin riding by shirtless on a bear.
Not yet, but it is my quest this year.
Right.
Right.
I mean, it's not quite May. I mean, is it really shirtless bear riding season?
I think so.
Russian, so it's hard for me to say. I'll tell you in a year.
Right. Yeah. Acclimate to the weather. You could probably do the shirtless bear ride in February. You probably could.
Yeah.
It has been going fucking nuts over in Ukraine, and Ray McGovern had an article up earlier in the week on his website, basically saying like when it comes to the line that Putin's drawn for Ukraine, like he's not fucking around.
Yeah. I actually was reading that before we started, and he cited President Putin as saying, where'd it go? Sorry.
Oh, no, I'm trying to search for it in the 850 million tabs I have open too.
No, I have it. I'm just trying to find the particular passage where Putin is not as restrained as usual.
Putin said Wednesday that Russia's response to provocations from Ukraine will be asymmetrical, swift, and tough, and that the provocateurs will regret what they have done in a way they have not regretted anything for a long time.
Yeah. So I know I didn't get to see the whole interview with Dean, but I'm glad that you did have him on because, as I said, I felt like he's very much specialized on Donbass, whereas I'm kind of across the board. So I thought he was a good person to like give you more history and nuance. And when things were starting in Donbass, I was in Syria in 2014, and I was very much focused on Syria because at that time it was not popular to speak out on Syria. And many of the people who speak out on Syria now had very anti-Syria positions and were among some of the more disgusting warmongers and propagandists. But now, thankfully, they've changed their tune. But anyway, so at the time that I was going there, it was a very unpopular position to take to actually give Syrians a voice. And this is an aside, it's anyway, like, as you're aware, I'm sure anybody who speaks out about Syria in a positive way is deemed an Assadist or on the payroll of the Syrian government or the Russian government.
Yeah.
And I'm maybe you and Vanessa have talked about this in previous shows, but most of the people I know that have gone to Syria have done so on their own dime. I've crowdfunded once. In Lebanon one time after being in Syria, I literally had $5 to my name, including my bank account. I was waiting for a payment for an article I'd done in RT. This is 2016. I just spent 2 months in Syria. I was waiting to go back to Syria. and waiting for a payment. And I realized, oh my God, I'm staying in this like shitty hotel in the hills outside of Beirut for $10, $15 a night, massive spiders on the wall. And I had just $5 to my name. I thought, like, I'm too proud to ask for help. And then out of the blue, some guy I went to high school with messaged me on Facebook and said, Eva, I really like what you're doing. I can't do it myself. I have kids, I have a family, I have a job, but I want to support you. I want to send you some money. It was like extraordinary timing. But anyway, all that to say, like, there have been some close calls financially and otherwise, but Vanessa and other colleagues have gone to Syria, have done so on their own dime. And anyway, this is a terribly long segue. I'm sorry. All I was trying to say was that in that period, I was very much focused on Syria because the propaganda was so intense and there weren't a lot of people doing that. So I was aware of events happening in Donbass, but I wasn't like following with great detail. When I went in September 2019, I didn't really know how things worked there because, I know in Syria, the procedures, the press office there was very accommodating. They have had vulture journalists come there, like the BBC, or I'm not sure who else has gone there, and then gone on to report dishonestly. So definitely they're wary, but they were very accommodating, very helpful. And so I had some things happen. This is my phone broke, my Samsung phone broke. So I think Dean mentioned that you can't withdraw cash there.
Yeah.
So that's actually the same in Syria. So you have to, in terms of like anticipating your needs as a reporter, you have to bring more money than you think you'll need. But the mayor of one of the main cities I went to was very helpful, and he actually helped me out with a car because I didn't have money to hire a car. I didn't know how it worked there. In any case, I had a press officer who spoke fluent English go with me, and I asked him, like, how did he get involved in this line of work? And he said, well, I wasn't a journalist before. And what he said, I would hear again and again from other people, like, I wasn't political before, but when they saw what happened in Odessa and other areas of Ukraine, they were determined it wasn't going to happen to them there. And so that's a lot of the people I spoke with said, like, initially we just joined protest, and Dmitry, the press officer, said, I never dreamed that we would be at war. Like, we never thought it would come to that. We thought the West would intervene. Of course not. But he went on to become a journalist, a frontline journalist. He's still reporting now. He's no longer with the press office, but he gave me a lot of interesting information. I'm not sure if Dean mentioned this, but like that Ukraine is violating the ceasefire. They're not allowed to use heavy artillery, heavy weaponry, but they found ways around it. And I'm not, in spite of all my time in Syria and Palestine, I'm not that familiar with weapons, but dogfish. But basically, they're using weapons beyond the permitted range. And so one thing Dmitry explained to me was that, like, they're not allowed to use mortars, but what they do is use RPG, and they fire mortar rounds, which are much heavier than RPG rounds. And he said another thing they do is they wait till the OSCE I forget what that acronym is, but it's a monitoring group that's supposed to be monitoring ceasefire violations. But he said they wait till they leave around 5 or 6 p.m. and then they just start intensifying their shelling. And nobody's there to witness it except the people, and then they can't really get good footage of what's going on. So then what the Ukrainian authorities can do is just say, well, no, this is the DPR people bombing themselves, which is something Israel would say, right? Yeah. And he said even, I think it was a week prior to me going there, I have to check my article, that the OSCE themselves had come under attack, but nothing came of it. No, Ukraine is basically getting away literally with murder. And then we just get these hysterical Western media reports about the separatist Russian invasion in Donbass. And that's another thing. I only met one Russian there. And he was a former military member who had finished his service in Russia and volunteered in Donbass. And I asked, and he eventually married there. So he lives there now. I asked him why he did. And he said, because we don't want what's happened in Ukraine to come to our doorstep, And then the other prevailing thing, I think Dean might have touched upon is that most of the people there are ethnically Russian, speak Russian, have, they want Russian taught in their schools, and Ukraine was changing that practice, to put it mildly. And so that was one of the reasons to wanting to be independent. In one of the hard hit areas, Zaitsevo, this really brave woman, Irina, I'll tell you that about her, but she was saying, like, at first we didn't want to break away necessarily. We just wanted to be able to practice our own culture. And then she said Ukraine basically brought us war. And so that's why they started fighting back. And I thought, in talking with you tonight, another element I can bring is in drawing comparisons between what I saw there and what I saw in Gaza, because there are many similarities.
Yes.
I was gonna ask. Yeah. So thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll just.
Well, I mean, what have you observed then?
Okay, so I'll just. I mentioned Irina. So she's she's the administrator of the town of Zaitsevo, which is a very small town north of Gorlivka, which is north of Donetsk, and it's a frontline area. Her office is about 800 meters from the front line, and then beyond her office, I went with the press officer and a military member to areas 500, 600, 400 meters from the front line. All the houses, I think Dean mentioned, you'll find them either with gaping holes in the roofs or walls burnt out from having burnt down from being attacked with a mortar blast or heavy machine gunning. I saw a house that was still smoldering from attack a day or two prior. And most of the people all the people there I saw were elderly. There may be children, but I only saw elderly. And I visited, at least 3, maybe 4 frontline areas. And all these were elderly, some like maybe middle-aged, and they all said, we have nowhere to go. So this is one parallel with Gaza. They have nowhere to go. In Gaza,
I watched a couple of the videos that you had put out about that. It was Irina, the like older one. I think it was like a brown dress or something like that you had filmed there.
No, that was a woman in an area called Mine 67. The woman that showed me her house.
Yeah.
She broke my heart. She, for some reason, really
I didn't need to cry that morning, Eva Bartlett, but thanks.
Yeah, just something about her really reminded me of my own mother. And so then I was just thinking, like, God, it's bad enough for a random civilian person I've met to be living in these circumstances, but like, what if this was my mom? And she was talking about trying to fix up the holes in her house so she could live there, and her husband had died, and she was doing this on her own, and at night the terror began. Just as I used to say when I was giving lectures about Gaza, layer upon layer of misery, manufactured misery. And so the parallel civilians in these borderline areas that have nowhere to go, that are attacked routinely by the Israeli forces, by Ukrainian forces. In the case of Gaza, they literally have nowhere to go. They can't flee their own borders, They can't flee the very tiny strip that is the Gaza Strip. Mm-hmm. And I was in Gaza during 2 wars, the 2008-9 war and the 2012 war. And the 2008-9 war, I was with medics in Gaza City and northern Gaza. And northern Gaza was extremely hard hit. And there were so many times when we would finally be able to, I'm not a medic, obviously, I was just there to document, but to document the war crimes. And also we were essentially acting as human shields, hoping that the Israelis wouldn't bomb the ambulances or attack them as they do. That didn't work. They did actually attack an ambulance I was in. A sniper shot a medic that was just 20 meters outside of the ambulance collecting a corpse, and they just unleashed. This is during ceasefire hours. There was like a period of 3 or 4 ceasefire hours in which people were supposed to be allowed to go out and get food and supplies. So uniformed medics going to collect a corpse, and an Israeli sniper starts firing at them. They carry the corpse, they drop it, they run for the ambulance, and the sniper fire runs right up to the ambulance. And thankfully they weren't killed. But some days later, or the next day, another medic I worked with was killed when the Israelis fired a dart bomb directly at the back of the ambulance where he was standing. So, and this is another parallel. So I asked Irina, the woman in Zaitsevo, I said, just knowing how it works in Gaza, suspecting it's the same thing. I said, can ambulances get to the houses on the front line? She said, no, they can't, because they'll be fired upon. So basically, and the older woman, 84-year-old woman, I think she was, that you asked about, I asked her, like, well, she said the cell phone doesn't work there. So I said, like, well, how would you call for an ambulance if you need it? And she said they would ask one of the soldiers to get help. But then they made the point again that ambulances couldn't get there, so somebody would have to transport them to a point where an ambulance could get. And I have this experience with farmers in Gaza. In fact, one day, I think it was in 2010, February, I think it was, this farmer, a 17-year-old deaf, I think he was 17, a deaf farmer who was a paid laborer. His cousin had been killed 2 or 3 weeks prior, shot in the neck by an Israeli soldier. He was working with other young laborers, and the Israelis rocked up to the border as they do, got out of their jeeps, started firing. We stood like this. I had a bullhorn. I was saying, you're firing on unarmed civilians. They fired at us, around us, and they shot the guy in the leg. And so thankfully he lived, but there are other cases when farmers in these border regions are shot, or not just farmers, but people living there. And if they're shot in an artery, they only have a limited amount of time before they bleed out. And so ambulances can't get there. So it's often fatality.
Let's think about that too, because if you're on the side that's being fired upon, you're a soldier, there's a civilian who lives, within that frontline area, they're injured. Now, at least 2, if not 4, if not 6 of your soldiers have to stop what they're doing to get an injured civilian out of the way.
Yeah.
And if you're because Dean was telling us that the Donbass army as it is largely it's all volunteer, but it's also people who, at least up until a few years ago, weren't anything approaching professional soldiers.
Yeah.
And now they're facing the fucking NATO-backed Ukraine military with the SS Totenkopf fucking tag on their goddamn uniform.
Yeah. Before I went to Zaitsevo, I met some of the soldiers. They were on a break, and exactly, they weren't soldiers. Like, I think if I remember, they joined in 2015. Joined up as soldiers, and one was, I think, a truck driver, others were miners, various professions, but unlike the white helmets, not bakers. But yeah, it's and this is the thing, they're portrayed so despicably in the media if they're mentioned, and they're just people defending themselves and against both the Ukrainian neo-Nazi military and also global indifference and media whitewashing. Like they're aware of how they're portrayed. They did ask me what people in the West think of neo-Nazis in Ukraine. I said they don't know, mostly.
Well, and one of the reasons we kind of do know is because of reporting that came out of you or Bealey or a handful of other people that were like, hey, wait, something's not right,
And I'm just curious, what's kind of the difference in terms of reporting or international observers acting as human shields, doing what you did in Gaza? Is there a difference in numbers between people doing that in Gaza as opposed to in Donbass?
Oh, yeah. Gaza is very difficult to get to, right? So I got there by boat from Cyprus in November 2008. And that was a fluke in itself. I'm still to this day surprised that the Israeli military didn't stop us, but somehow we got in. Five boats got to Gaza. But otherwise, the only way really to get into Gaza is via Egypt, and that's very difficult because the Egyptian authorities are compliant with Israel in keeping the Rafah border crossing closed most of the time. And it's almost impossible to get into Gaza, really. So it's difficult to really compare numbers because it is so hard for activists to reach Gaza. The rest of occupied Palestine, it's slightly easier, but I'm sure you're aware how difficult it is if you look remotely sympathetic to Palestinians' very righteous cause, then Israel just won't let you in. Donbass is also hard to access because if you want to report on the side of the DPR, the LPR, you'll be coming in via Russia and not via Ukraine, right? In fact, this is an aside, but there was some YouTube channel I was following until recently, and he did some report on Donbass. I'm like, how the hell did he get there? My understanding is there's no foreign reporters there now.
Is this the dude from Texas that moved there?
Oh, I don't want to speak ill of him, but he's one of the reasons I almost didn't do any reporting in Donbass.
Okay.
I can tell you in a private conversation, but
okay.
Yeah. Anyway, no, this guy, I forget his name. He has a YouTube channel, Bald and Broke or something like that. So I was watching it, and he was interviewing people, and I was like, these don't sound like people I met in Donbass. Like, they're very anti-Russian, and they're not talking about Ukraine bombing them. What the hell? And then I realized, oh, okay, so Donbass is a geographical area. Parts of it are still in Ukraine, right? So the DPR and the LPR are in the Donbass, but there's still parts that are in Eastern Ukraine. So he was reporting from there. So back to your question, like, if you want to report from within the DPR, LPR, you'd have to go via Russia. And now with all this, like the last year, travel and all that stuff. So I'm not aware of that many journalists and activists that have gone to Donbass. I mean, I know there's Graham Phillips, and there are others. See, initially when I went there, I told you I wanted to both see for myself, but also to make connections there so that I could then put forth their reporting. But to be honest, the only person, I haven't even met Dean, but he's the only person I really trust, because unfortunately, in war zones, you do get opportunists that go there, and they're there not for the reasons they're portraying, but other reasons. So it's
the exact same in the Assange community.
Oh, yeah, I believe it. I believe it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So really, my only sources that I trust when it comes to accuracy and intent are Dmitry, the press officer I met, this really lovely young man, Alexei, that I met in Gorlivka, and a handful of people I know on Facebook that have been reporting from the start, and Dean as well, you know, but so it makes it difficult to get a variety of information. I do look at the DAN, Donetsk News Agency, but their reports are kind of similar to the Syrian Arab news agencies, SANA. They give you the information, but they're short, and they're not very, you know, in depth or anything like that. But anyway, they're at least information.
Yeah, I mean, half the time I know something about Syria because Beely's sending me a SANA update.
Yeah.
And if it's like really hectic, you know, then we'll sit there and talk about it for a while. But it sucks when it's a news wire and you only get maybe 2 paragraphs, and it's your job to turn that into a report, or turn that, like in our case, turn it into a, you know, 10, 20, 30-minute news segment. Especially when the ancillary reporting around it doesn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, I mean, really, and I want to thank you, by the way, Eva, because you gave me permission to be ignorant as shit about Donbass. The first tweet I saw from you on it was something to the effect of, like, if you're in the West and you haven't heard about this, there's a lot of reasons, so it's okay. And I was like, well, cool, because I don't know shit, you know.
You know what though, I when I used to give lectures, I did a lot of tours around the US and Canada and Ireland talking about Gaza. I used to, and I still am, be very open about the fact that until my late 20s, I was ignorant as fuck about everything. Like, I wasn't a bad person, but I wasn't interested in anything political. I was a piano major at school and a French minor, and then I did a whole lot of traveling on my own just for the hell of it. I loved it. And then I taught English in Korea. And actually, it's funny, like, I'm in no way comparing myself to James Corbett, because all the respect to him, but he does have a similar kind of awakening story as me.
Yeah.
His was, I think, some years prior to mine, but no, it was around the same time.
I think 9/11 got Corbett.
Yeah, and it got him earlier than me. But what got me first was Palestine, and I have to say, I hate admitting their fucking name. Sorry, I hate admitting their names, but Democracy
You're
Now!
allowed to swear on this show.
Yeah.
I didn't know. Sorry, kids. Democracy Now. So the similarity with James Corbett is that we both were living in apartments. He was in Japan, I was in Korea, where we had internet for the first time in our apartment. So I used to put on Democracy Now when I was cleaning or cooking, and this is back in 2003 or 4. So the end of the second Intifada, there's a lot of reporting on Palestine, and I remember thinking like, what's Palestine? Like, I literally didn't even know where it was. I was like an average American, I suppose.
I saw that on a map in an Indiana Jones movie once.
What's that, Palestine?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. I'm surprised it wasn't censored.
Yeah, actually, if you go to the, like, it's the, I can't even remember which, but they do that, the travel scenes in the Indiana Jones movies where they have the little airplane and the line and shit.
Yeah.
One of them does cross right through it. It says Palestine, or at least it did upon release, because that particular bit is stuck in my head throughout the years as like, oh, they were allowed to put that in movies once.
Did they like Star Wars special edition it where they like just like CG'd Israel over Palestine?
I'm gonna have to go back and check, because this is also that's the same era of movie release where Rambo 3 came out, and they thanked the fucking Mujahideen at the end credits of Rambo 3.
You remember
Brave Fighters, if I recall.
Freedom Fighters.
It was like,
Brave.
God bless
Sounds
the fighters
sounds like
of the Mujahideen.
Nafeez Ahmed.
One more time.
It sounds like Nafeez Ahmed.
Yeah.
You know him?
Yeah.
Total cretin. I wrote an article some years ago. I think it was when Ghouta was being liberated or about to be liberated. And I think I was addressing, the crescendo of war propaganda that we saw with Aleppo and when it was being liberated. And I remember pointing out that it was Nafeez Ahmed. He was lauding some Syrian person, I think, quote unquote, rebel terrorist. And this guy himself was like an ardent Al-Qaeda lover, ISIS lover. So anyway, what was I saying? We were talking about comparisons between Gaza and Donbass. Well, another obvious comparison is that both people are vilified. So if anything happens in Gaza, then the pro-Zionist or Zionist media will say it's all because of Hamas, or they're all terrorists. And it's the same kind of thing with Donbass. It's not reported on. I mean, just imagine, and I'm not sure if Dean made this point, but I'm sure you already have thought it. Imagine taking Donbass and putting it in Russia. And so the shelling that the people of Donbass are subject to, imagine it's coming from Russia. Imagine how Ken Roth would be on fucking Twitter every day condemning it, right? And all the media would be condemning it. But because it's not being done by their enemy, then they're just utterly silent on it. And it pisses me off, because this is the same media that will shed crocodile tears for civilians in Idlib. They don't give a shit about people in Idlib. They don't give a shit about Syrians. They don't give a shit about anything. It's controlled media, but they will shed these crocodile tears, right? But then this very real thing is happening in Donbass, where people are suffering immensely and needlessly, and they say nothing.
No.
Yeah, no, it's like the same Zionist who, like you said, will blame everything on Hamas and call every Palestinian in Gaza a terrorist is out here pretending like they care about Uyghur Muslims in China.
Right.
Like, I'm supposed to believe you after all the manufacturing of consent you did for war in Syria, in Iraq, in continuing to be complicit in Zionist war crimes, and you expect me to now believe that you care about Muslims. Okay.
Yeah.
We what was that? Oh man, there was a thing that well, I don't know. We were supposed to have Beely drop in on us for this, and she's having a rough day and needed to postpone. So I could probably ask you too, but I mean, because I'm sure you've been like at least kind of picking up a little bit about, the repeated ongoing ceaseless bombing of Damascus and other parts of Syria by Israel, and that now like Russia and the Syrian military finally came out and said, okay, look, we're going to defend ourselves now.
Yeah.
There's an agreement. Like technically yesterday when that Iranian tanker got attacked by Israel, that was an act of war against Russia, Syria, and Iran. Like technically, that was an act of war against 3 nation states. Holy fuck, Eva Bartlett, what's about to happen in Syria?
Oh, I don't do predictions.
Speculation. Okay, so historically.
Well, historically, yeah, there hasn't been a response other than Syria defending itself, shooting down Israeli missiles. But the thing is, one reason I don't do speculations is that I don't have any insider intel. And I think there's a lot more going on behind the scenes than we'll ever know. So I think it's, for all the people that shit on Russia saying, why doesn't Russia do more for Syria? I think that's just completely immature and ignorant, because we don't know what's happening behind the scenes. There could have been deals made, that at a certain point Israel will no longer do that. I don't know, but I do think it is significant that Russia and Syria have put their foot down now at this point, given that they've taken so much abuse. Syria's taken so much abuse from Israel. So it does seem like a game changer moment, but what's going to happen? I couldn't say.
What do you know about Rojava?
It's paradise.
Oh God.
So the reason I'm asking is, well, I mean, we've talked about it a few times. We talked about it with Vanessa briefly, but it's an
international workers' commune, Steve.
Derek Bros, the Conscious Resistance, will be on the show tomorrow for the first time. This is a gentleman that I really wanted to talk to for a while now. And part of their tech summit yesterday was a woman named Rachel Rose O'Leary, who where's the article? There it is. Who has this article? She's a like self-proclaimed like anarchist cryptocurrency, like I don't know, diehard or some shit, but she a cryptocurrency writer and trainee C++ developer at Polytech, currently a contributor to CoinDesk, and they're doing something called the Dark Renaissance. So she is spearheading a sort of like crypto revolution. So I wasn't gonna pull it up, Josh, I'm sorry. She's spearheading like this crypto revolution, talking about, I just spent 8 months in Rojava, and like, so red flag right there. I was like, okay, now I'm listening. Then her entire presentation is, here's what the Unabomber got right. And like,
wow.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, it's fucking like, it's worth watching. Okay, it's worth watching for that.
Steve, I really think we should all like admire Rojava. It's just, we should really like aim to establish an international workers' commune safeguarded by the CIA and
U.S. military.
US military.
Yeah. But I mean, even what's your understanding of what Rojava actually is?
I haven't looked into it that much, mainly because I feel like it gets so much. I should educate myself more on it. But, people would in their criticisms, which are many of me, they would say, well, you haven't gone to quote unquote rebel areas. You haven't interviewed them. I'm like, well, I'm not going to go to terrorist areas. Number one, I value my head and like it on my neck. Number two, they get plenty of airtime thanks to BBC and other whitewashers. And my feelings similar with Rojava. My basic understanding is that as you were saying, workers would say it's a paradise where women are at the forefront, and you have all these beautiful, striking women fighters, apparently fighting ISIS and all this stuff. What they don't speak about is the ethnic cleansing that these, not all Kurds, of course, but some of these Kurdish militias have been doing in Syria. And as for Rojava, I don't know, I haven't been there, so I really can't speak to it, but I can speak to what I think it is, and it's another propaganda construct, right? To make us believe, number one, that the Syrian government is so evil, and this paradise is here where people finally have equality and freedoms and all that stuff. But also, it's another way of occupying part of Syria, right? And probably
it's effectively in the U.S. military green zone.
Yeah.
To my understanding, to the best of my understanding, like it's in a green zone for the U.S. military inside Syria.
Yeah, I mean, I was familiar with El Tanaf, which is further southeast along the border with Jordan. But yeah, I mean, that makes sense. We know that the U.S. is stealing Syria's oil and wheat and cotton and other things. But I think in terms of media, it's just been a propaganda function, right? Again, a way to say, like, there are people fighting ISIS, and, it's not the Syrian army, of course, it's not the Russians, it's the Rojava people.
Yeah, it's almost like a trap for a lot of Western leftists and Western anarchists I'm coming to see, where it's like essentially getting them to romanticize these people like terrorists, essentially, and people who want to ethnically cleanse the region, and outposts that are protected by the CIA and US military. And that's what Rojava's become, is like a way to romanticize those people. And it's just weird almost, but you expect it because that's just how propaganda works.
I actually I had a young anarchist come to one of my talks. I think it was in Winnipeg in 2017. And so at that point, I would have been talking about what I'd seen in Aleppo before it was liberated, which was immense, suffering under terrorism, and like the people I'd met at the one of the main hospitals, the families of people who had been murdered by these terrorist bombings. I was giving statistics like nearly 11,000 civilians killed by terrorist bombings, talking about my own experiences. And then this Rojava head anarchist wanted to talk about the concept of nation states and borders. And I don't know what he was saying. It was just like, I really don't understand what the fuck you were saying. And he wanted to imply that I didn't value human life. And I was saying, like, I've just been talking about human lives being taken by terrorism, and the fact that the Syrian army is fighting this terrorism. It was immensely frustrating. I had another one of these same types attend a talk I gave in Hamilton. And ironically, they're all about equality and all this, but they were trying to get my talk shut down. And it's just like, you're not even going to let me speak, and you want to talk about equality. So I don't know. I think, to be honest, that's another reason I've been put off delving too deeply into Rojava. It's just everything around it sickens me. Like, there are people literally having their heads cut off by these terrorists. There's Syrian soldiers sleeping on the ground in their uniforms, eating, not getting paid very much at all, defending their land, living horrible circumstances. And you want to talk about this fantasy little fairy tale land because you think that's the most important thing to discuss here? And the other thing is, it's even if I wanted to talk about political changes in Syria, it's not my place. I'm not Syrian, right? It's for Syrians to discuss their political future.
Wait, hang on. Let me try and wrap my head around that for a moment. You, as a non-native Syrian, are saying that it's not your responsibility to determine the agency of the. I'm sorry, I'm not sure. I'm not.
I think I've lived in the East too long.
That self-determination is a wild concept, man.
I wonder, like, daily, when people collectively decided that questions were treason, and that not just accepting the narrative on its face was a criminal act. Like this is why we enjoy talking to you. It's why we enjoy talking to Whitney and Vedmore and Vanessa. It's because there's just this, I don't know, overwhelming culture of go along to get along, or we've just got to ignore this so we can get back to normal. Yeah. And the handful of us that have been pointing out that there's no such thing as going back to normal are I don't know. It seems like we're not screaming at each other as much anymore. But there for a while, it really felt like there were just not that many of us, and every time we'd talk about it, we'd only be talking to each other about it, and I don't know. I want to say that we're kind of punching through some of that. We're at a really weird moment where it looks like the censorship is going to come down really fucking hard, really fucking quick.
Yeah, just today, I don't know if you follow Dr. Simon Goodek, I think his last name is. I
don't know. Maybe.
Let me
familiar-ish.
Yeah, he's only been on Twitter for a year or so. It's funny because I interviewed him today, and he told me, because I wanted to point out, like, he's got a pretty good following, around 30,000 followers. Only haven't been on Twitter for a year or so. And he's not Ban al-Abid, so it's not like his followers have been bought or his Twitter account created. But anyway, it's not going to load for me. He was frozen off of Twitter today because I have to look at my own. What am I doing looking at his? Because he tweeted an article about masks, and he didn't even add a commentary. Here we go. So he said, I was put into Twitter jail for citing a peer-reviewed scientific paper, Cancel Science is Real. And then he posted a screenshot of his tweet. I don't know if you can see. No, you can't see. Really. I'll send it to you. So yeah, Twitter locked him out for 12 hours just because he posted a link to this article. And then he said, they accused me of spreading dangerous and misleading information. And it's an article on weather masks. I didn't see the article itself, but then I went and found, actually from one of the articles I wrote recently for RT, I made a reference to some masks being toxic, although my personal opinion is they're all toxic in different ways. But even CBC, which is Canada's state-owned media, or state-funded media, even they, for some reason, had an article on one particular variety of masks that were being pushed in, I think, Quebec, and how it was potentially cancer-causing, had potentially cancer-causing ingredients or whatever in it. So it's not like a far-fetched thing at this point in 2021 to be posting articles critical of mask wearing, but Simon got his account restricted for it. So I'm frankly surprised any of us are still on Twitter,
There are all kinds of accounts getting suspended for mentioning how, for mentioning their personal experiences and saying how ivermectin helped them get over COVID when they got it. And just for that, suspended for sharing a personal experience in the hopes that it might help other people. Because that's what you do in a public health crisis.
Our fellow MCSE network, I don't know, host, contributor, whatever, Franco, he got a 12-hour timeout for typing the word ivermectin, or hashtagging ivermectin, and then hashtagging HCQ. Didn't even type out hydroxychloroquine, because who wants to spell that? But but that's what he caught the suspension for, was simply typing out the words. So I went underneath it and replaced a couple of the letters with numbers and phonetically spelled out HCQ, which is fun, by the way, to phonetically spell out the letter H. Try it. It's AICH, I promise, every time. Thank you, Terry Pratchett. But I mean, just that's how ridiculous it is. If you rearrange letters for numbers, you can get away with saying ivermectin. But the Twitter is so afraid of you recommending another product from Big Pharma, by the way.
What if he had put a screenshot of it instead of typing the letter? I mean, absurd enough that he can't type the letter, but
I don't know. We'll have to try that.
Upside down.
I hate to burst your bubble, but like the same way I make slides, they can rip words out of images.
Okay.
All right. So do lowercase L vermectin.
The number 1.
It'll still catch it.
I haven't had these issues on Twitter or Facebook. The only thing I have had is you remember when everybody's followers went down like some months ago?
Yeah.
I went down by 2,500 or 3,000. And then I don't care that much really. I mean, it's you get the notifications. Oh, you have 10 new followers. Oh, you have 30 new followers. I was getting this every day. And I was like, but my numbers are going down. This is weird. So I think that maybe that's, and on Facebook, I have people messaging me or commenting on posts and saying, oh, I didn't know you're still on Facebook. I haven't seen your post in years. So I'm not getting frozen, but I think there's probably an element of shadow banning or something going on. Not that my
100%. Before I got rid of my Facebook account, I would put a link to the show. The 3 people who had like Facebook's version of push notifications for me would see it. And then nobody else would. I would put up a picture of like a landscape picture or something like that. Put up a picture of the deck that I was building. Fucking hundreds of people would see it. Hundreds of likes, thousands of people would see it. Just shit like that. Take a video of my kid like with a watermelon on his head as a helmet. Yes, that happened.
Please tell me your kid's a teenager.
I think he was 7 at the time.
Okay.
I think he was 7 when he became Sir Melonhelm. But I almost got through that with a straight face. Almost.
Shout out to Waylon.
Yeah.
Waylon.
He will take over the world one day. He will. I want him to meet Freya, Amber's kid. I do. I think that they would lay waste to an entire predator class.
I have about 15 more minutes if you want to get back towards like Donbass, Gaza.
Yes, please. Sorry, I ramble and get off topic like as a matter of course. So, yes, let's do because.
I'm trying to go back there to Donbass, but then I contacted the media office there. But apparently, from this side, I'm not sure if it's due to COVID measures or what, but. I'm working on getting special permission from the Russian side to be able to enter Donbass because only citizens can enter at this point. But
how? Okay, so politically and in terms of like PR and shit, where does Russia like how? I don't know, dude. How involved is the state of Russia in this? Are they going to become involved in this? Is this something that Russia like is getting dragged into when it's really just like different? I don't know. I guess ethnic groups or cultures inside Ukraine. Like, is it a Ukraine problem or is it going to become Russia's problem? I guess is what I'm trying to figure out.
Well, I know that Dean mentioned it, and I also said that most of the people I met in, of course, I wasn't in the LPR, I was in the Donetsk People's Republic. Most there identified as Russian, or at least like ethnically Russian speaking. And if I understand correctly, Russia has offered to those who wish they can have Russian passports, thereby making it a Russian issue, right? Because if these are now citizens holding Russian passports, then their safety is now a Russian issue. I know when I was there in 2019, I don't know when the passport thing began. I don't know if it was at that time. The one Russian former soldier that I met and spoke at length with, I posed the question, not my question, but a question a lot of people have asked is, why isn't Russia in Donbass defending the people, contrary to what the corporate media say? And he essentially, I'd have to look at my article, but he essentially made the point like, well, Russia's under no obligation to do so. But it is, I think at that point, it was sending aid to the people of Donbass. But now it is a different scenario, isn't it? With the U.S. openly sending heavy weapons to Ukraine, with Biden, who we all know is not really the leader of the U.S. But anyway, he's the face, and with him calling Putin a killer. I'm sure you're aware that recently Putin was meeting with the leader of Belarus, whose name is eluding me right now. Is it Lukashenko? And I think it was during that conversation, he issued Zelensky an invitation to come and discuss with them. Come to Russia and discuss issues. So and as you cited the was it the Ray McGovern article where he's saying if Ukraine or allies were to do something, then it would be asymmetrical, or they would respond very, very heavily, very forcefully, to paraphrase. So I think those are good indicators that things have really changed and that Russia possibly would take a more active role. But I don't know. This is, again, I'm not going to speculate. I've been reading analysts that I respect giving different analyses. Many are saying they don't think it will come to war because really America isn't going to have Ukraine's back, and Russia would decimate the Ukrainian forces, and it would just be a stupid move on Ukraine's part. I have seen some think that it could come to war. I don't personally pontificate on that, but I hope it doesn't. Obviously. But even if it doesn't come down to Russia and Ukraine going head to head, the issue remains the people in Donbass are still being bombarded and machine gunned. I mean, I remember one man I met. He lived in a village that had been divided because part of the village was down a road that was no longer accessible because Ukrainian forces would snipe that road. But he still lived there. So when he needed supplies, he would walk along that road, face the snipers, and walk into town, and then I guess go into Gorlovka to get whatever he needed. And I was wearing, for the first time in my life, a body armor. I'd never worn a helmet or a flak jacket before. It was given to me, and I was grateful to have it, given that we were so close to the front line. But this poor man was just wearing his plaid shirt and walking down the sniper lane towards his home. And he said he'd already been shot in his leg once before. I remember just thinking how poignant that was. Like, here I am. Okay, I'm there of my own volition. I paid my own way to get there, etc. But I am wearing protective clothing. And these people that live there are vulnerable elderly people that have nowhere to go, no protection whatsoever, and they're being assaulted. And this is like 7 years of this, and even if they haven't been the ones that have been injured or martyred, it's a tragedy. But even if they haven't been injured, and even if the houses haven't been fully damaged or partially damaged, although all of them have been partially damaged, they're living with the psychological warfare, right, of every night and during this, and during the day as well. And Gorlovka, when I was there, Alexei told me the last time they were really hard hit was, I think he said 2016 and 2014. I'm not sure whether Dean spoke of this, but in July 2014, there was a day, I think it was the 27th of July, where the city of Gorlovka was shelled, hit with heavy missiles from morning to night. And I believe it was 30 people died as a result, either that day or afterwards succumbing to their injuries. There was a day known as Bloody Sunday. And Alexei had said, since then, since 2016, the attacks were more on the periphery of Gorlovka. But I've been reading reports recently. I know Dean's been sharing tweets that they're attacking that city again. So it's no longer just the periphery areas, and same with Donetsk. So my feeling is I have a hunch, and I hope that's right, that there isn't going to be war between Ukraine and Russia, but nonetheless, the people are still suffering, and I don't know how that is going to be resolved, because the people there's no way in hell they want to go back to Ukraine. Not after Ukraine has been torturing them psychologically, and really by the bombing and the heavy machine gunning, the shelling and the sniping. But also, like people I met in Crimea, why would we want to go back to Ukraine? Life was shit under Ukraine. Like in Crimea, they were saying there was no infrastructure improvement during the years that they were under Ukraine. As soon as they returned, as I say, to Russia, the improvements started. And when I was traveling around, the first 4 or 5 days, I was with a friend who had rented a car, and then I was just traveling by local transport on my own. And everywhere I was traveling, it was like construction, new bridge, construction, smooth highways or smooth roads. And the friend that I was with had been in Crimea some years prior, like right after the referendum, and at that time the roads were pretty crappy. And so he was just saying, like, wow, there's been so much change since I came here years ago. So why would people want to go back to Ukraine, especially not just the infrastructure issue, but hello, neo-Nazis, why would they want to live there? It's incredible. And then we have, my own Canada's deputy foreign minister, Chrystia Freeland, whose grandfather was a Nazi collaborator, and she's like a raving pro-Al-Qaeda, pro-neo-Nazi in Ukraine terrorist. So I don't know what the political resolution of the situation in Donbass is going to be.
And I know you got to get out of here too. And I just thank you so much for hanging out with us.
Yes,
like
thank
really
you.
appreciate it when you come on the show. You're definitely like one of our go-to sources to help us understand what's going on in that part.
And your dogs too. Thank you.
Your dogs are adorable.
I'm going to make sure they're in every interview from now on.
I mean, I would just, but yeah. Please let people know where they can find your work, how they can support you, and yeah, just thanks so much. I really do appreciate these.
Well, thank you. I did make a link tree with links to the various social media platforms. I am technically still on Patreon, but I'm opting out of Patreon because they've censored Last American Vagabond and Corbett Report. So just on basics of ethics, I don't want to participate in that platform. My page is still up because there are a couple of people that said, please leave it up until, you've transitioned. I did open a Subscribestar, and I have a Telegram channel, which
we should get you onto Rockfin too. You can upload your videos and your stuff there.
I have chatted with the founders. They invited me on there a while back, and I think at the time I was daunted by the whole Bitcoin. That stuff is just over my head.
Yeah,
I did have a chat with them again mid to late last year, and I think it was late last year. And I am interested. I'm still a bit daunted by the tech side of it, but I'm happy to join there. I'm well-intentioned in starting my own podcast series, which I'm calling Reality Theories. But a number of things. Yeah, I've done one interview, and then the one I did today with Simon, Dr. Simon. He's not a medical doctor, a PhD. I'm going to include in that, but I need to do things like, and I would welcome any sort of help or insight or whatever advice you might have on like logos and just, getting the show going. But my intent is just like, I've been doing activism since 2007 in the West Bank, and then 2008 and on in Gaza and so on. And I've made a ton of contacts over the years and done a ton of interviews, and I would like to turn it back towards them to share, because I think what you guys do is great, because you're giving so many people a platform, right? And that's what it should be. It shouldn't be about being number one alternative media. It should be about making sure we all have places to speak our unique, knowledge and specialties. So that's what I'd like to do once I get the Reality Theories going. I do have a Telegram channel with the name. And I'll send you the link tree if you want to share that. There's PayPal on my blog, although it would be nice if I could find an alternative to PayPal. So there's that. You can support me on PayPal, on Subscribestar.
Is Buy Me a Coffee a viable alternative to PayPal, Josh?
It uses PayPal and Stripe on the back end.
Okay.
So.
I think there was one other. I'd have to look through my notes, but one of those things where I have a long to-do list, and some of them, like starting a new website instead of my In Gaza blog, but a website with my own proper name, it's just so daunting to me. And I've had people.
I know. This is why we have Sleepy Josh. Because I would be like totally fucking worthless. I would be good enough to show up and say the words and ask some questions, but like after that, dude, no.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I have a similar phenomenon. Thankfully, I don't see any of these huge supermarkets anymore. But when I would go back to Canada, and I'd go to a supermarket, I'd be like, "Oh my god, it's so big compared to where I've just been," you know. And it's like there's like tens of items, the same item, but different brands and different twerks and I'd be like, I just don't want to even look at it, and I walk out, you know. And that's how I feel when I look at. I use WordPress at the moment, and I know they have different templates for actual websites instead of just blogs. But then I look at all the templates, and I'm like, it's too much choice. I don't know where to start. So, anybody listening out there, I could use a lawyer, and I could use tech support.
Well, let's manifest that for Eva Bartlett.
The lawyer is to sue places like sue. Well, I don't know if you can sue Wikipedia, but like sue people who have libeled me over the years.
Oh, did you get Philip crossed?
Oh yeah.
Fun.
I had supporters actually edit the Wikipedia smear entry on me, and they said it.
That's what I tried to do with you and Vanessa Beeley, and they changed it back instantly. I'm like, you know what? Fuck you. I'm gonna fuck up everyone else's pages then, and then I'm gonna keep reversing the edits until you ban me.
Glory went on a Wikipedia shit posting spree for about 3 weeks there. It was wonderful. It was what she did to Neera Tandon's Wikipedia page was just legendary. It was. All right, we're gonna go ahead and get out of here. I know that on Anonymous Bites back in a little bit, David McBride will be back on to update Australian whistleblower. Big breaks in his case. 3 o'clock on the West Coast, 6 o'clock on the East Coast. The Deborah Gets Red Pilled podcast will be joining us. Just got a message from Adam. They're looking forward to it. Tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. on the West Coast, 1 p.m. on the East Coast, Derek Bros. Episode 300 coming up soon here on the Slow News Day. Big thanks to Sarah Wagner for the Super Ray. And everyone who was watching over on the Rockfin, if you're watching on YouTube, please stop because YouTube sucks. We will be, if you're looking for a free alternative to YouTube, we'll be live streaming on Odyssey starting this afternoon in perpetuity. Odyssey has live streaming up, ready to go. We're all geared and hopefully we'll be able to make that platform something because again, YouTube sucks. That's going to do it for this particular episode of Slow News Day. Big thanks to my better than your co-host, Glory Jones, Sleepy Josh on the ones and twos, Eva Bartlett one more time. And everybody out there watching, we love you guys. We'll see you very soon. Good luck to us all.